We're back with Formula One again, and today we're going to be talking about the relationship between ride height, especially for teams like Ferrari, and altitude. And we need to discuss this very technical matter is Mustafa and Mr. Johnny. I'm still Afolabi, and welcome to another F1 show.
Yeah, this is pretty technical. I mean, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but I'll try. Okay, so we know that Ferrari has problems. Especially, I think, my theory is they have problems at sea level. They can't go low to the ground because of plank wear. Another issue is the tires don't warm up quickly. So they have to if they want to do well in qualifying, they have to ramp up the rate at which it heats at the beginning, but then that burns out the tires for race pace too. Third issue is that their brakes overheat. I think their brakes overheat and then cause wear on the brakes too. I think that's related to the plank wear issue, in which, because of the front suspension that they made the change, the car is having plank issues and brake wear. The plank issue is not an issue in performance, but it's an issue in that if it goes too low, you get suspended. So therefore, Ferrari can't ride its optimal ride height or on sea level. Now, we saw in Mexico, Ferrari did well, and my theory is that they did well at Mexico because whatever the dynamics between their suspension and everything else, and the fact that there's less downforce due to gravity and things like that, they're able to ride closer to an optimal level without giving up other parts of performance. That's my theory. Now, going into Brazil, which is going to be at 800 feet altitude, that's pretty high, second highest in F1. Mexico is 2,000. So my argument is that with this race increase in high rate, it may not be as much as Mexico, but I still think that they can still ride higher because Brazil is the second highest, and we'll see decent performance from them. Also, it's going to be raining, so we'll see what Leclerc and Hamilton can do. The only issue that we have to worry about with them at a high altitude, which I'm not sure it should be a problem, at high altitude, air is thinner. So if you have heating issues with your brakes and with your tires, then that's going to be worse. But I think that for some reason, I think the heating issue with the tires is based on how they set up for qualifying, and they can sort of, get away with changing it so that their tires may not warm as quickly. But we have to remember, on thin air, your tires will warm quicker anyway because there's less. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, in thin air, your tires will warm up quicker, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Because there's less air to cool it. Yeah, so maybe that's one of the reasons they may not suffer from it at that level. And I think that a lot of the tire heating issue also is due to the brake wear, and the brakes start getting hot, and then the tires start getting hot. But at higher altitude, there'll be less brake heating because there's less ground force problems too. But I don't think the tire heating is the main issue. I think that their advantage at the fact that they can go lower without plank wear makes them a lot faster than they would be at sea level relative to the other teams. Because a lot of people will say, well, the other teams get the variables up at the top. But the way the other teams are set up, for some reason at a lower ride height, Ferrari is very, very good, but they can't have the plank. And the fact that they can go lower at high altitude helps them relative to the other teams because the other teams are dealing with other dynamics. What are your thoughts, Mr. Afolabi?
Yeah, and that's a brilliant observation.
I just got my PhD.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant observation because I thought of it too, that this your theory is actually the reason why the competitive landscape becomes a bit, level compared to when you're at sea level. Because for Ferrari, who has been having problem with skid block or plank wear, now that you're at a higher altitude and not at sea level, you discover that there's less total downforce because the air is thinner. And air density is actually directly proportional to downforce. So if there is thinner air, it means the downforce too will be lower. So, and then the vertical load on the car as well is less. So for a car that is scared of running foul of regulation of ride heights like Ferrari, they can actually push this to their advantage. It levels the field for them because the reduced load means that there's less force pushing the car's floor. And then the mandatory skid block regulation against the ground is the risk of falling foul of that is actually reduced. And then the weakness too of the car aerodynamically is reduced. And then all of a sudden you have a level playing field. Now, teams that run maximum downforce wing setups, usually compensate for thin air. But when you have a car that is running a low ride height, you discover that the dynamics of the altitude shifts the aerodynamics in your favor. would see in Ferrari's case. And most of the South American circuits, they are usually at high altitude, especially Mexico and Sao Paulo. So I think it's a brilliant observation. I thought of it myself too. Yeah. The issue I feel Ferrari might have, like you rightly alluded to, is the warming up of tires and how this might affect them later on in the race when there's degradation and possibly maybe
the tire deck is probably bad. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because we have to remember, and that's a good point, because if not for that safety flag, Verstappen would have passed Leclerc. So that the tire issues is what's going to hurt them. But they're going to be fast in qualifying, and they're going to be fast early in the race.
There will be.
Yeah, very good point. So I guess I got the PhD, you got the Nobel Prize.
But this is this, right?
What are your thoughts in general? Yeah, about what's coming up with the performance?
Like for instance, when I just go back, I think about what's his name, Schumacher, and he never really had. I mean, there were all these factors about the altitude and so on, but he was still able to bring the best out of that car. Ferrari. Ferrari with the right driver, obviously, I mean, you could it kind of like an all-rounder actually. You could do anything with it. It's just a pity that that hasn't happened since then, days of Schumacher, or even now. I think the last person was Raikkonen, because like Ferrari always did well in Brazil, actually. Ferrari was always up there in Brazil, so there was never a problem, So let's see what these clowns are going to do this time around.
Yeah, and you had the main point. Now, a lot of the problems with that car, I mean, it's not the car, but we know that Leclerc can drive well. But to be honest with you, Leclerc doesn't have racecraft. This is what I mean. He's a good racer. Like, he has racecraft for blocking people. But he doesn't take into account things like he's not consistent, number one. And he doesn't take into things like tire preservation and things like that. Hamilton, too. I don't know. Hamilton's been struggling with the technique on the car. I will give Leclerc credit. He knows how to do this and that. But if this had been a Schumacher, it would have been scientific and exact. Like, if you ask Leclerc, what is it that you did to drive so well? He'll like, I don't know. If you ask Schumacher, he'll say, okay, I did the Jake differential at this part of the track, and I did that, and I told the mechanics to do this. And that's the difference. Just like Verstappen, even though Schumacher is better than Verstappen at this, Schumacher will, if there's any problems with that car and handling, they're going to work on that during setup. And also, Mr. Too much beer, man. What they had, Mr. Johnny. Mr. Johnny. And we remember that back in the day, there was no parc fermé. Schumacher and guys like also Vettel, they would stay in the mechanic shop with those guys overnight before the race, because before you could actually alter the car. There was no parc fermé. You could change the car overnight. So this is the type of work that these guys do, especially Rosberg, the German drivers do. So I think what Ferrari needs is a German driver. Wouldn't you agree? They need a German.
I guess so. Yeah.
If you're a German driver, you're not just a driver. You're an engineer too. Yeah. We're going to say, Mr. Pallaby. Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, what you have said is quite in order, and that's what Verstappen too does as well. The driver in those days was a part of the engineering team. So they worked together to ensure, even though Mr. Johnny said the car was, pretty much good across all tracks, but I'm sure when they moved to high altitude tracks like Sao Paulo and Mexico, there's some work that Schumacher would have done with the engineering team going into those races to ensure that the right setups are carried out, tweaks that are necessary to be made are done to prepare the car for, a higher altitude, basically. So, and you don't have that anymore now. There's a gap between the driver and the engineering team, which is one area where I think Red Bull has an advantage. And
you should hire us as consultants. We'll do it. You know what's funny? What we're doing is theory. We're not engineers. The engineers know the particulars, but we can see the big picture. It's very odd. But also, we were taken aback because remember, we thought Verstappen was going to win in Mexico because we didn't take into account that McLaren has such good tire deck and that thin air. But what I'm trying to say, all of this, anybody can do it, whether you're an engineer or not. You can use common sense to make general predictions,
sure.
But it's up to the professional guys like Ferrari and co who have engineers. It's up to them to use the data. So all I'm saying is that we could be general. We could just give them general advice. Hey, look, you guys are going to be on high altitude. And we've said it.
Yeah.
You won't have plank wear issue, but you're going to have heating issues of your tires. That's all we have to say. Then the engineers. But I think part of it is that they do have that. It's just that there's corruption. These teams are not spending money on analysts and stuff. They're not hiring the right people because they're just trying to profit. What's his name? the owners of Ferrari, they could hire the people to do what we're saying to do, but they don't want to do it. And this is why McLaren is so good, because they do it. But the rumors are that McLaren went over their cost cap.
Yeah.
So what they do is McLaren spent the money you need to do on research, but maybe next year we'll find out that they were cheating. You get my point? Yeah. And Red Bull has a weird car, but Red Bull uses more intuition because their wind tunnel, they've said Red Bull's wind tunnel is from 1852, I think. Yeah. Even before flying. Remember
1852.
Yeah. No, wow. I'm just joking. I think it's like 1930 or something like that. So that's the problem with Red Bull. That's also the Red Bull owner, Matish's son, doesn't want to spend money.
Yeah.
That's why they sit down with Verstappen and they do tests. They think with their head, but they don't correlate it with the wind tunnel. You see what I'm saying? Because if they had correlated with the wind tunnel, they would have known that the thin air was going to be, because they thought they were going to win in Mexico. So it's just that there's not a lot of common sense in F1 now, and I think it's because it's a circus where they just want to make money. Sort of like Man U and Etienne, they're like, oh, we don't care about the science. We just want to get our profit, right? The brothers who own Man U. All right, so pretty good show. Last thoughts, Mr. Johnny. My brain finished it this morning, man. I didn't have enough coffee.
Well, so it's going to be a sprint, right?
Yeah, it's a sprint race.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like that. That's more points for McLaren and them to get if they win. I don't like that. I just want to see. Yeah, Mr. Johnny, what's going on? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. Ferrari, I think, we'll see what Hamilton does. I'm always going to, let me just not put too much.
Podium for Hamilton.
Podium for Hamilton. Let's put that way. Yes, podium for Hamilton.
He's won podium this year.
Yes.
And I think they have an advantage. He would have gotten a podium in Mexico if not for the 10-second penalty.
Yeah, if not for all that rubbish.
So if the high altitude is still an advantage and they're faster than Red Bull, he has an opportunity to get a podium. And he's closing the gap between him and Leclerc. All right, last thoughts at Fabi before we get out of here.
Yeah, what I just wanted to chip in is that with less relative emphasis on aerodynamics now, because we know the downforce is going to be reduced, I think mechanical grip becomes a very important factor. Mechanical grip, and that's where the employment of a turbocharger becomes very crucial. How efficiently this is deployed would also help the cars to be able to take advantage of any of the air density or altitude or whatever. Mechanical grip will be an issue. I hope the teams get their setups and chassis balance right.
No, I hope no teams get it except for Red Bull, okay? Yeah, right. All right, take us out of following me. You guys, very good show. Mr. Johnny, I'll send you the info for the thumbnail after too. Thanks. Yeah, take us out of following.
All right.
Okay, it's been another very insightful and rather academic F1 show. And from the technical gurus here, Mustafa, Mr. Johnny, and myself, we'll be back again with the next one. Bye for now.
All right. Nice work, guys, man. Our flow is good, man. Our flow was so good today.
Yeah,
very good, man.
Yo.
Talk to you guys later.
All right.